and thank you for joining us tonight. This event is for all Regina Chaley families to learn more about the Classic Learning Test, more commonly known as the CLT. This is the same as the CLT college entrance exam, which has become popular in the last 7 years. All Regina Chaley families received a brochure in the same email which announced this webinar, so be sure to take a look at that when you get the chance. My name is Katrina Hartsock, and I'm the Director of Education at Regina Chaley Academy. Regina Chaley recently announced a partnership with the Classic Learning Test. This partnership will enable us to provide high-quality assessments that are most in line with our mission of offering both a Catholic and classical education to homeschool families. The Classic Learning Test currently offers an 11th and 12th grade college entrance exam, as well as a 9th and 10th grade college preparatory assessment, and the CLT-8 for 7th and 8th grades. But beginning next year, the Classic Learning Test will offer nationally standardized assessments for 3rd to 6th grade students as well. This means that we will now have access to a nationally standardized suite of assessments for 3rd through 12th grades, which are accepted by many colleges and universities and recognized by all states that Regina Chaley operates in. But what does this mean for our Regina Chaley families? Well, beginning in 2023-24, the CLT suite of assessments will replace the Iowa or ITBS standardized tests at Regina Chaley. There are also benefits for our families and students for this year. Many RCA students are already receiving large scholarships to colleges and universities based on their CLT scores. Regina Chaley will administer the CLT to all 11th and 12th graders this spring semester on February 16th at your local Regina Chaley Center. Our students will also pilot the lower assessments for 3rd to 8th grades at your local Regina Chaley Academy Center this May. Tonight, we have with us an expert on the CLT assessments. She will step you through what the CLT is, how the assessments are created, and what they assess. So now I will introduce to you the Director of Catholic School Partnerships with the CLT, Mrs. Chelsea Niemec. It's all yours, Chelsea.
Thank you, Katrina, and thank you to all of you for joining for this presentation. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Lovely. So I just want this evening to be an opportunity for you to get to know the Classic Learning Test, to get to know who we are, what we do. So I love this painting. It's reminiscent of the home, of course. Much cleaner than my home, but I would love for you to feel as if you're being invited into our CLT home, our CLT family this evening. And to start, I just would like to introduce you to our mission at CLT. CLT exists to reconnect knowledge and virtue by providing meaningful assessments and connections to seekers of truth, goodness, and beauty. And of course, this is very much in line with the mission of Regina Chaley, as all of you are hoping that your students are seeking those transcendentals of truth, goodness, and beauty in each Regina Chaley Center. I also want you to get to know our founder, Jeremy Tate, a little bit. So I have a few Jeremy isms to share with you that I think you'll find entertaining. So Jeremy says, in 1973, there were roughly 13,000 homeschool students in America. Today, it's over 5 million homeschool students. And obviously, this had a lot to do with COVID, but that's just mind-blowing to me, how many families have given homeschooling a try, have been had that instinct, that draw to homeschooling, and then found that they loved it. And I'm sure many of you are in that boat, and you've chosen Regina Chaley, of course, to support you in that mission. It's a simple fact that homeschool students blow others out of the park in terms of test scores, but I am more impressed with the things that cannot be measured: a deep love for family, faith, and a love for learning simply for the sake of learning. Education belongs in the family first, then the parish, then the local community. The last place it belongs is in the hands of state or federal governments. My advice is to fight like hell to homeschool or send them to a classical school. The Department of Education should not exist, but if it's going to exist, it should be staffed entirely by former classical school teachers and homeschool parents. And that's a little bit of Jeremy. He's very bold. At CLT, we're very bold. We're going against the grain. We are a competitor to the College Board, direct competitor to the College Board, which has dominated the testing industry for many, many years. I am very proud to work at CLT. I am a former teacher in Catholic classical schools. I'm also a graduate student currently studying to get my master's degree in classical education at the University of Dallas. And so I'm very, very proud to support the mission that we are working towards to give schools and families an option for testing that does not compromise their family values, that does not compromise the mission of their school. And so that is really the heart of who we are. So that's just by way of a little bit of introduction. Some history of how we got started. Jeremy was working at a Catholic all-girls high school in the Northeast in 2015. And this school was run by some Dominican sisters. And the sisters, they were, trying to get their girls to take, Catholic apologetics, philosophy, humanities courses. But the girls were choosing the AP courses, and they were being very, there was a lot of pressure to choose these AP courses over these other courses that weren't eligible for AP credit, but were so valuable to the mission of what the sisters wanted to instill in the girls. And Jeremy was quite perplexed. The sisters would always say, we could offer these classes more if it wasn't for College Board. We could offer great British literature if it wasn't for College Board. And Jeremy thought, why isn't there a competitor to the College Board? In 2015, I'm sorry, I'm recovering from the flu here. But in 2015, College Board made a huge move by aligning with the Common Core state standards. And this essentially made College Board, made the SAT and the ACT purely achievement-based assessments. They were no longer aptitude assessments, for which they were known for so long. So what that really means is that they no longer looked at how students think. They really were only concerned now with what a student can remember and regurgitate on a test, check the boxes of those standards. So this is where you get questions from students, which every teacher hates. Is this going to be on the test, right? Every teacher hates that question, but this is assessments. And it really makes education purely utilitarian at that point, because the students are viewing the whole point of learning and being in the classroom, what their teachers are teaching them. The whole point of that is leading up to these big assessments. And so, they pass the assessment, and that ends up being the end of their education. And that's, of course, not what Regina Chaley wants to instill in their students. That's not what many Catholic classical schools, many Christian schools want to instill in their students. They want students to love learning for the sake of learning. And so that opened up an opportunity for a new standard. And Jeremy thought, you know what, let's do it. We're taking on the College Board. And so CLT was founded in 2016 for that very reason. The difference of CLT, again, like I've mentioned, we assess both aptitude and achievement. So we're concerned with how students think, giving us a more holistic view of the student. And we want students to be able to communicate clearly, understand metaphors, think logically, reason well. We want a holistic view of education that enriches the curriculum, doesn't work against the curriculum. And we have a consistent format across all tests, which is I think that's a very important point, especially being a former teacher. You see students get one test when they're in elementary, a completely different test maybe when they're in the middle grades. They take the PSAT and then they take the SAT or the ACT, and they're getting, multiple different formats of these tests. Unfortunately, what this does is it encourages strategizing, right? The test becomes less about, show what you know, and more about gaming the test and trying to, take week-long courses. I mean, I went through these assessments when I was in high school. There wasn't anything else available to me. So, I remember, these big manuals, 500 pages, but half of it wasn't even about the content of the assessment. It was really just about how to take the test and how to understand the framework of the test and game it in a sense. And that's not what testing should be. We want an honest, simple reflection of a student's intellectual life. So we have a consistent format across all our tests. So when Regina Chaley third graders are taking our lower grade assessments in third grade through sixth grade, they're going to have a very, very, very familiar format to when they get to seventh and eighth grade. It becomes consistent from 7th to 12th grade. Exactly the same. The only differences between the lower grade and the 7th through 12th graders, I apologize. The only difference is that we've made 4 sections for the little ones just to kind of keep their attention spans, to respect their attention spans. We don't want to put a little one in front of a 45-minute section, and that's unreasonable. So once they get to 7th grade, they have 3 sections. And then we also have overall, we have shorter testing times and faster turnaround for analytics and results. So those 3 sections are the verbal reasoning, the grammar writing, and the quantitative reasoning sections. Like I mentioned, those will stay the same from 7th grade all the way through 12th grade. So the content gets a little bit more rigorous. The question types will change a little bit, but those 3 sections are going to be the same. And this just alleviates that test anxiety. The students know what to expect. It's very familiar to them. So test anxiety doesn't become a factor just because they're surprised, and they have to consider, the format or whatnot, a whole new format. They don't have to deal with that. So that's, I think, a huge plus of CLT. This is another really unique part about CLT, a part that I really love. This is, we have an author bank that is determined by our board of academic advisors. And our board of academic advisors, you can see them on our website. They are from all sorts of corners of the Catholic and Christian intellectual world, or charter world, or well, probably not as many charter leaders, but we do have all sorts of really, really virtuous and strong thinkers on our board. And all the way from University of Notre Dame, Catholic University of America, University of Dallas, some headmasters of Catholic classical schools across the country, the head of the Dominican Sisters of Nashville. So we have lots of Catholics on our board of academic advisors and many, many other great folks. And they, their role is to come around and debate about our author bank, who's going to be on our author bank. And our author bank is from the ancients all the way through the late moderns, all of the greatest thinkers that have contributed to our society. So we have, all the way from Homer, Plato, Aristotle, Virgil, all of the ancients, but as you're getting into the late ancient period, you also have St. Athanasius, St. Jerome, St. Augustine, right? So the early church fathers are there. We also have the medieval St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Hildegard of Bingen, and so on. The early moderns, late moderns, you have Tolkien, Lewis, Jane Austen, Dorothy Sayers, right? So some of the greatest that has ever been thought, written, and said. This is what we want to introduce students into. And in the classical world, of course, you may be familiar that this is generally called the Great Conversation, right? The conversation of the greatest thinkers throughout time and the works that have been passed down from generation to generation. And we want students to be introduced to this. There are plenty of thinkers that are controversial on this list, but these thinkers the students will be exposed to these thinkers in one form or another. The difference is that, a College Board does have these ideas from these thinkers infused into their content, but they don't use primary text. And that's a big problem because students can't actually read these thinkers for themselves. So, CLT really, we pride ourselves, we value primary text sources. We don't use informational texts. We don't hide, and weave different ideas from these, late modern thinkers or, German philosophers into our content. We don't do that kind of thing. We let the thinkers speak for themselves. We're going to put a Caesar next to a Chesterton. We're going to put a Kant next to a Lewis, a Hegel next to a St. Thomas Aquinas, right? St. Gregory the Great next to a Nietzsche. And students find this fascinating. They really enjoy taking our assessments. We have so many notes, even handwritten notes that students have sent in to us, expressing how much they actually enjoyed taking the test, which is mind-blowing because I'm sure any of you parents that are listening to this, it's not often that your children come home saying, gee, mom and dad, I loved the test I took today, right? But many of our students love taking it because they're seeing this dialogue between some of the greatest ideas that have been debated, from religion to philosophy, science, mathematics, and they're seeing these thinkers dialogue with one another, and they're fascinated by it. So our assessment ends up actually being enjoyable for this reason, and I would agree. Again, one of the things that makes us distinct from College Board and many of the other assessments that are available today, pretty much all of them, are that we don't censor the Catholic intellectual tradition. We, in fact, infuse it into the author bank. So these are all the saints that are on our author bank. I've pulled them out just so you can see, how many we have represented, and many of these are doctors of the church. So we really want to bring back that influence, because if we're talking about the greatest thinkers of all time, the greatest ideas of all time, many of those came from the Catholic Church, and the church has always been involved in the great conversation. So, although many of the people that work at CLT are not Catholic, many of the people that support CLT and many of the people that are on our board aren't Catholic. Many of us are, but we can all understand the impact of the church on the great conversation. And so that's something that all of us really value. Okay, so now on to our suite of assessments. We have our CLT, which was our flagship assessment. It's from grades 11. It's designed for grades 11 and 12. It is our college entrance exam. We partner with over 200 colleges. They offer over $100 million in scholarships to CLT test takers. And we offer computer-based at-home assessments for what we call direct-to-consumer test takers. But this graphic doesn't include our in-school test takers have the ability to take the test on paper. So at Regina Chaley, the plan is to take all assessments on paper. And for CLT 10, this is designed for our freshmen and sophomores. So this can be comparable to the PSAT and ACT Aspire. You can also see the comparisons of our comparisons of the scores on our website. If you're interested in seeing, if you get a 110 on a CLT, what does that equal on the SAT? You can see all of that on our website as well. And same for CLT 10. Top performers for the CLT 10, this is a really great benefit to our students. Top performers are eligible for $2,500 scholarships to any of our partner colleges. And this year, we've also added to that list any ACTA A or B college. And so you can go to the American Council of Trustees and Alumni, and you can look at all of their A and B colleges, which are many, many colleges we don't partner with officially. But through ACTA, you're able to apply those $2,500 scholarships to any of those colleges as well. And the CLT 8 is designed for grades 7 and 8. Many of our schools use this as a high school placement exam for freshmen, but for Regina Chaley, it'll be used for internal metrics, just like you've been doing before. We offer comprehensive analytics. I don't have time to do an analytics demo. Maybe that's something that I can definitely do for you all in the future. But needless to say, we have plenty of graphics and data points. And it's really, really user-friendly. I actually value that as a teacher because when I was in the classroom in certain schools that were offering other assessments, I'd be handed a spreadsheet with numbers and I'm not a statistician, so I'm not, going to go in and I frankly didn't have time as a teacher to make sense of all that data. So we really do it for you. We show, we show charts with historical data. So you'll see how your student has performed over time. And you will also see their averages. You'll get your 2 different percentile data points. You'll get their CLT user percentile, which is how they perform within CLT users. And so this is really a good apples to apples comparison of students, whether they're homeschoolers, whether they're classical, they're attending classical schools, they're attending Christian or Catholic schools. You're going to get a good idea of how they compare to those like-minded students. And then you'll also get a national percentile. All of our assessments are norm referenced, so all of your students will get a national percentile. So you'll still be able to see how they perform compared to all public school students, all charter school students. So you won't lose that data point. Okay. At CLT, your students will have access to scholarships to great Catholic universities. Like I mentioned, we partner with over 200 colleges that accept CLT test scores for college entrance. Scholarships are available exclusively to CLT test takers at many of our colleges. Just on the Catholic side, two of the colleges that prefer the CLT on applications are Ave Maria and Wyoming Catholic. These are colleges that declare on their website officially that they prefer CLT. But many of our colleges like to see a CLT score on applications, and they really value CLT test takers, because what we often hear from colleges is that they have seen that CLT test takers, they know what kind of student they're getting when they accept a CLT score into their university. A student that submitted a CLT score, they're going to get a student that is well prepared for the rigor of the education, that isn't going to drop out after a year, that's going to contribute positively on campus. These are the types of things that we hear all the time from our college partners. And one of the things I love most about CLT is that we are connecting students to like-minded colleges, right? So, I went to Texas A&M for my undergraduate degree. I had never heard of Benedictine. I'd never heard of Franciscan. I never heard of Hillsdale or Wyoming Catholic or Ave Maria or Christendom, or University of Dallas even. Being in Texas, I never even heard of the University of Dallas. And now I'm a grad student at UD. I would have loved to go to any one of these schools for my undergraduate. I just didn't know. So one of the things that we're doing at CLT is we're connecting students and getting students exposed to colleges that they may not have heard of before or may not have considered. So that's something that I think is really valuable. Here's a list of some of our partner colleges, lots of our Catholic colleges, and you'll notice this is essentially the Niemec Guide college list. So we have, of course, University of Dallas, University of St. Thomas, we've got Thomas Aquinas, Thomas More, Wyoming Catholic. So all of the beautiful, wonderful Catholic colleges that you all know and love, we partner with all of them. A couple of, before I switch and let you read it, a couple of wonderful pieces of feedback we've gotten from Regina Chaley moms have shown that this CLT can actually make these colleges financially feasible or more accessible. And that's something that we're definitely working towards and always trying to support our students, we're trying to advocate for our students, encourage the universities to support CLT students financially. And we're always continuing to do that. So here's just a few testimonials from Regina Chaley parents, and then I have 2 testimonials from our college partners. So this lovely Regina Chaley mom says, my 12th grader received a 40% scholarship offer from Christendom and the St. Scholastica scholarship. That's $76,000 total based on her CLT score. And another Regina Chaley mom says, my son, an avid classical reader, highly benefited from the CLT's classical material, allowing him to increase his test score and earn an additional scholarship. We hear stories like this all the time. I can think of one boy who got an $80,000 scholarship to Christendom, and there's so many more scholarships that are coming from CLT test scores. So we're always trying to, like I said, encourage our colleges to put their money where their mouth is. If they love our CLT test takers, we want them to support them financially. The University of Dallas gave me their admissions information pertaining to CLT for this school year. They said we have 8 students in the freshman class who submitted CLT scores. 5 of the 8 received our top academic level scholarship, which is indicative of the academic quality and preparedness of these students. 51 students applied with CLT scores, 45 of whom were admitted, another marker of their academic strength. Our CLT test takers are engaged and serious applicants who already have a strong interest in the liberal arts, so they thrive in UD's environment. And Benedictine sent me an email. They said Benedictine was an early college partner of the CLT, and we've always found that a CLT test taker is a perfect fit student for Benedictine's Catholic Benedictine liberal arts education. One thing to note about applications is that CLT can be used as a supplement to an application. So you can have an SAT score, apply with an SAT score and a CLT score to just differentiate and set your student apart. That's another great strength about CLT. Okay, a few final thoughts. So CLT, I want to leave you with 3 things. CLT is, we are a holistic and humane inspired test company. We are always thinking about what's best for the students and what's going to give families and students a well-rounded experience of testing. So we're not encouraging a utilitarian approach of testing at all. For example, when we're looking at lower grade assessments, we are defaulting to paper paper testing. And we're doing this because we know that the little ones don't need to be sitting in front of screens for multiple hours. We know that paper it's more tangible, it's more humane, it helps them slow down, and those are some of the things that goes into our decision making influences. Even though we don't even currently, when we offer paper testing to schools, we don't even make a profit on paper. So it's not financially beneficial for us to choose the holistic and humane route as a company, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. And so, our schools and our supporters, our partner colleges, all of the people that support CLT help us to make those decisions. And so we're so grateful that Regina Chaley is supporting us as well. And we definitely want you to feel like you're a part of our CLT family. You can always reach out. I can leave my information, or maybe Katrina can put it in the newsletter, or whatever email or communication line you guys have. You are always welcome to email me questions if you would like to. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And I would just like to leave with 2 short little poems. I think it's always hospitable to bring a poem to any sort of home gathering. So the first one is a very beautiful but bittersweet poem, and the second one is more of a Christmas themed poem. And it's from this beautiful book called The Harp and the Laurel Wreath. I'm sure many of you already have this one, by Laura Berquist. But this one's called In School Days by John Greenleaf Whittier. Still sits the schoolhouse by the road, a ragged beggar sleeping. Around it still the sumacs grow and blackberry vines are creeping. Within the master's desk is seen, deep scarred by raps official, the warping floor, the battered seats, the jackknife's carved initial. The charcoal frescoes on its wall, its doors worn still, betraying the feet that creeping slow to school went storming out to playing. Long years ago, a winter sun shone over it at setting, lit up its western window panes in low eaves icy fretting. It touched the tangled golden curls and brown eyes full of grieving, of one who still her steps delayed when all the school were leaving. For near her stood the little boy, her childish favor singled, his cap pulled low upon a face where pride and shame were mingled. Pushing with restless feet the snow to right and left he lingered, as restlessly her tiny hands the blue-checked apron fingered. He saw her lift her eyes, he felt the soft hand's light caressing, and heard the tremble of her voice as if a fault confessing. I'm sorry that I spelt the word, I hate to go above you, because, the brown eyes lower fell, because you see, I love you. Still memory to a gray-haired man, that sweet child face is showing. Dear girl, the grasses on her grave have 40 years been growing. He lives to learn in life's hard school how few who pass above him lament their triumph and his loss, like her, because they love him. So I just love that poem. It's such a sweet, sweet poem. It reminds me of the movie Up a little bit. And this is the last one. It's A Christmas Carol by G.K. Chesterton. Very short. The Christ child lay on Mary's lap. His hair was like a light. Oh, weary, weary were the world. But here is all right. The Christ child lay on Mary's breast. His hair was like a star. Oh, stern and cunning are the kings, but here the true hearts are. The Christ child lay on Mary's heart. His hair was like a fire. Oh, weary, weary is the world, but here the world's desire. The Christ child stood at Mary's knee. Her hair was like a crown. His hair was like a crown. And all the flowers looked up at him, and all the stars looked down. So thank you so much. And I believe we have a few questions.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, for sharing that poetry with us. That was such a nice touch. I'm also encouraged that RCA will now have nationally normed standardized tests that respect the intellectual tradition of the Catholic Church and celebrate the great thinkers of the last 2,500 years. And CLT will provide that direct path for our students to the Newman Guide colleges and universities. Much to be excited about at Regina Caeli. Yes, we have collected some questions from parents leading up to this webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and reference those, and we can allow Chelsea to share her expertise with us. Okay, so the first question from Regina Caeli families is, how will RCA administer the CLT at the center if it is currently taken on the computer? I know you addressed that in your presentation, but maybe you could just revisit that here.
Sure. Yes. So for schools, we also offer a paper option. So the plan is for Regina Caeli to offer all CLT assessments on paper, and we're happy to provide that.
Wonderful. I'm so excited that we'll be able to do that for our families. How does the CLT compare to the ITBS or Iowa test for lower school students?
Yeah, that's a great question. So CLT is definitely a significantly shorter assessment. Again, like Katrina mentioned, we complement the Catholic intellectual tradition, and that is a big difference. The content of the CLT is aligned with the classical learning stages. And this offers more meaningful analytics, right? You're not going to have those moments where it's like, oh, let's not, let's take that with a grain of salt because that doesn't work for us. So this is really going to be an apples to apples assessment for you guys. And again, I believe ITBS tests for social studies, which is often, a gateway for all sorts of ideological sorts of content. And they also test science. We don't test social studies at all. We don't test history content, nor do we test science content or skills. We include science passages or thinkers and passages from scientific thinkers and historical figures, of course. And on our lower grade assessments, we will have historical profiles, and we will have scientific natural science passages, but we are not testing skills for those things, primarily because many curriculums in schools, their scope and sequence is very different. So it's hard to kind of cast a wide enough net for all different types of schools. We want to give the schools freedom for those subjects to, the teachers know best the skills and the content that they want to test for those areas. So we're focused on the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic, those types of skills.
That's great, Chelsea. We have seen that with the current standardized test options, the social studies is highly politicized with fad ideologies, and that's just not what we want for our students. Do we know the expected numbers of students that will make up the national average when piloting the lower grade tests next year?
Yeah, so we are using the month of May this spring to norm reference all of our lower grade assessments. Our goal is to have 3,000 students taking our lower grade assessments at each grade level of 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And those numbers are what we're going to use to complete our norm referencing studies. We'll also be completing lexile and quantile studies. And I can share more about this. I believe we'll do a webinar more directed towards lower grade testing in the future. But those numbers are what we're going to use for our upcoming norm referencing studies.
Wonderful. And we will be holding a webinar to focus on those lower grade tests, again, with Chelsea Niemec in the spring. So you'll want to keep an eye out on your RCA email for that information. Okay, another question from an RCA parent. Do you have, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Which Newman Guide colleges accept the CLT?
Yes, so So like I showed on the slide before, we partner with all of the Niemec colleges. So any of them all of them accept CLT, and many of them prefer CLT and love our test takers.
Again, I'm just thrilled that the CLT will be a pathway, a bridge for our students to those Newman Guide colleges. So that's just going to be a great boon for our students. Do you have study guides or videos to help prepare students for the CLT?
Yes, well, I wouldn't call it a study guide. So one of the parts of CLT that I love and that we're very passionate about is that we do not want teachers teaching to the test. We don't want students we don't want this to be a high stakes assessment like the SAT and ACT. We don't want to repeat the ills of College Board, the mistakes that they've made that make SAT and ACT really anxiety provoking and high stakes and high pressure. We want our assessment to be an honest reflection of a student's intellectual life. And the best preparation for our assessments is a good education. So that fits perfectly with what's, the amazing education your students are receiving at Regina Caeli. And that is the sufficient preparation. But we know that, of course, students may want to, especially with college entrance and with scholarships being tied to the CLT specifically, students will want to prepare a bit, maybe just see what the questions are like, see what the format is. So we have made a student guide, and this will be available for purchase very, very soon. But this is just a little preview that I'm happy to share with you guys. It's so beautiful. It came in the mail this week to me, so I'm so excited to share with y'all. We currently have practice tests on our website. So no strategizing, no big manuals. We don't offer any of that, but we do offer 3 practice exams that are free. Any student can log on to our website and take them just to see what the test is like and get a little more comfortable before they take it. So that's, in this student guide, that's what they're going to find. You'll get 3 practice exams here, and answers as well. And we also have great, little pages that highlight our partner colleges. This one's Hillsdale. There's a University of Dallas one in here that I saw that was beautiful. And then it walks through all sorts of, how the test is laid out, how to prepare. And it's, like get good night's sleep, that type of a thing. Read slowly, reread questions, things like that. Nothing really strategic. So we offer the student guide, and that's really the best way to prepare through a good education and get the student guide if you think that would also help.
That's really great. I mean, really what we want our children doing is to be studying deeply and to love learning. And so many of the courses and the classes that students now take in order to get higher and higher scores on the College Board tests have really started to make those assessments less meaningful. So I'm just really grateful and enthusiastic that the CLT is really taking this approach. And it's very much in line with what we value at Regina Caeli.
Can I say one more thing about that, Katrina?
Go ahead.
I just thought about an analogy that I often use with my Catholic schools about how we view testing, and I think it does pertain to this question a little bit. When we look at the examination of conscience, for example, in the spiritual life, we use an examination to give an objective reflection of our spiritual life. And we don't do good things just to pass our examination of conscience. Otherwise, we would see there's something that needs to be remedied in our spiritual life. In the same way, we don't want students just learning to pass the test. We don't want the test to be the end of their education and the main focus of it. We want it to be one tool in the toolbox, just like our examination of conscience is one tool in our spiritual toolbox.
I love that. That's great. Thank you for that analogy. All right, and the last question from our parents, is the CLT used by universities with graduate programs?
Yes, absolutely. Many of our partner colleges have fantastic graduate programs and accept CLT for those. I'm in a graduate program at the University of Dallas. I believe some of the ones I can think of off the top of my head, Benedictine has an engineering program. UD has a business program. I think Benedictine might have a nursing program as well. Of course, there's
in the nursing program at Benedictine.
Yeah, Patrick Henry isn't a Catholic college, but they have a great law program I've heard great things about. So there's many degree programs that are available to our CLT test takers.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for taking the time to share this information with all of our Regina Cayley families on the CLT. Chelsea, as I said before, will be presenting to us again on another webinar in the spring semester, which will especially focus on the CLT lower grade assessments. So be sure to keep an eye out for that information in your RCA email after Christmas break. Also, just a reminder to go back to the email that announced this webinar and take a look at that brochure because that's an easy reference for you on some of the information that was shared today. So thanks again, Chelsea. It's a blessing to spend this evening with you. Yes. And just a reminder to our RCA families and anyone listening in, tomorrow is Giving Tuesday, and RCA is counting on your support. Your Giving Tuesday donation directly benefits students in need of tuition assistance, making true Catholic and classical education available to still more children. So to make a donation, please use the link that's in your RCA announcements document and be sure to share it on social media with all of your contacts. All right, well, thanks again, Chelsea, and thank you to all of our Regina Cayley families for joining us tonight.
Thank y'all for joining us.